The entire mansion fell silent when the most feared man in South Korea dropped to his knees. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above hundreds of stunned eyes. Powerful relatives froze. Servants stopped breathing. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed louder than usual. Nobody could believe what they were seeing. Kang Jun-woo, the billionaire everyone feared. The man whose name opened doors and closed mouths. The man who never bowed to anyone, was kneeling before a woman. His eyes were red. His hands trembled. And for the first time in his life, fear was written across his face. Not fear of losing money. Not fear of enemies. Not fear of power. Fear of losing her. Please don't leave me. His voice cracked. The woman standing before him lowered her eyes. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I love you, she whispered. But I can't spend the rest of my life begging people to accept me. Then she removed the engagement ring from her finger, placed it gently on the table, and walked toward the door. What happened after that moment would shake an entire family, expose years of selfishness, and force one powerful man to fight the hardest battle of his life. The battle for love. If you love Korean billionaire romance and mafia love stories like this, subscribe now to @Official_Threads and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Long before she entered that mansion, Amara had already spent most of her life feeling unwanted. She grew up on a small island off the eastern coast of Africa. The ocean was beautiful. The sunsets were magical. But behind those beautiful views was a lonely childhood. Her father died when she was very young. Her mother struggled to survive. There was never enough money, never enough food, never enough security. Yet despite everything, Amara grew into a kind young woman. She learned something important early in life. People who suffer understand pain better than anyone else. And because she understood pain, she always tried to make life easier for others. Nobody knew that years later, this simple quality would completely change the life of one of Korea's most powerful men. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in Seoul, Kang Jun-woo lived in a completely different world. His life was surrounded by luxury. Private jets, luxury penthouses, corporate empires, political influence, generations of wealth. People called him a mafia boss, not because he committed crimes, but because of the power he carried. When he entered a room, everyone noticed. When he spoke, everyone listened. When he made decisions, entire industries shifted. Yet despite having everything money could buy, there was one thing he secretly lacked: peace. Most people saw strength. They didn't see loneliness. They didn't see pressure. They didn't see the burden of carrying an empire built by generations before him. Every day felt like another responsibility, another expectation, another sacrifice. His family expected perfection. His board expected success. The media expected excellence. Nobody ever asked if he was happy. Then one day, everything changed. And it happened because of a single accident. Amara had moved to Seoul after receiving a scholarship opportunity that later turned into a job offer. The transition wasn't easy. New language, new culture, new people, new struggles. Many days she questioned whether she belonged there at all. One rainy evening, after finishing work, she stopped at a small cafe near the Han River. The rain poured heavily outside. Customers sat quietly enjoying coffee. Amara occupied a corner table while reviewing documents. Across the room sat a man wearing a dark coat and baseball cap. Nobody recognized him. Nobody except one elderly waiter. Because beneath that simple disguise sat Kang Jun-woo. For once, he wanted to be treated normally. No bodyguards. No meetings. No reporters. No expectations. Just silence. Everything remained peaceful until an elderly customer suddenly collapsed. Panic spread through the cafe. People stood. Some screamed. Others froze. Nobody knew what to do. Except Amara. She immediately rushed toward the old man. She knelt beside him, called emergency services, checked his breathing, comforted him, stayed calm, while everyone else panicked. Jun-woo watched the entire thing. What surprised him wasn't her actions. It was her sincerity. There were no cameras, no social media, no audience. Yet she helped as though the stranger was family. Most people reveal their true character when nobody is watching. That night, Amara revealed hers. What she didn't know was that someone was watching, and he couldn't stop thinking about her. A few days later, fate crossed their paths again, this time at a charity event. Amara attended because her company volunteered there. Junwoo attended because his corporation funded it. The moment he saw her, he recognized her instantly. She didn't. To her, he was simply another wealthy executive. The event lasted several hours. At the end, a misunderstanding changed everything. One of the organizers accidentally spilled wine on Junwoo's expensive suit. Everyone panicked. The organizer looked terrified. People knew Junwoo's reputation. Many expected him to explode. Instead, before anyone could react, Amara stepped forward. It was an accident. The room fell silent. Nobody usually spoke to Kang Junwoo so directly. Yet she wasn't afraid. The organizer looked relieved. Junwoo looked surprised. Then something unexpected happened. He smiled. A genuine smile. The first one he'd shown all evening. That single moment sparked a connection neither of them expected. But not everyone was happy. Because danger wasn't approaching from outside. It was already waiting inside Junwoo's family. The Kang family valued power above everything. Status, influence, money, connections. Those things mattered. Love did not. For years, Junwoo's mother had carefully planned his future, including who he would marry. Several wealthy families had daughters they hoped would become part of the Kang dynasty. Business alliances depended on it. Political relationships depended on it. Power depended on it. Then Amara appeared. And suddenly, all those plans became threatened. The first time Junwoo invited her to the family mansion, she immediately sensed something was wrong. The mansion was breathtaking. Elegant gardens. Massive marble staircases. Luxury beyond imagination. Yet somehow it felt cold. Not physically. Emotionally. His mother greeted her politely. Too politely. The kind of politeness that hides disapproval. His aunt barely acknowledged her existence. His cousins whispered behind her back. The servants exchanged curious looks. Amara tried her best. She smiled, showed respect, participated in conversations. But no matter what she did, something felt off. Later that evening, she finally understood why. One of the relatives approached her privately. "You seem like a nice girl." Amara smiled. "Thank you." The woman returned a fake smile. "But women like you rarely survive in families like ours." The words hit harder than expected. Before Amara could answer, the woman walked away, leaving her standing alone, confused, uncomfortable, and for the first time, questioning whether she truly belonged beside Junwoo. Unfortunately, that was only the beginning, because someone inside the family had already decided that Amara would never become one of them. And that person was preparing a plan that would slowly turn her dream relationship into a nightmare. But what Amara didn't know was that Junwoo was already beginning to notice the cracks forming around them. And once he discovered who was responsible, everything would change. For the next few weeks, Amara tried to convince herself that she was overthinking things. Maybe she was simply unfamiliar with wealthy families. Maybe she was too sensitive. Maybe she needed more time. After all, Junwoo treated her differently from everyone else. Whenever he looked at her, his usually cold eyes softened. Whenever she spoke, he listened. Whenever she laughed, he found himself smiling without realizing it. For a man known for his emotional distance, that alone was extraordinary. But love has a way of making people ignore warning signs. And unfortunately, the warning signs around Amara were becoming impossible to ignore. One afternoon, Junwoo was forced to leave Seoul for an important business conference. He would only be gone for 3 days. Before leaving, he personally asked his family to make Amara feel welcome. Everyone smiled. Everyone agreed. Everyone lied. The moment his private jet left the city, the atmosphere inside the mansion changed. The fake smiles disappeared. The warmth vanished. The masks came off. At breakfast the next morning, Amara arrived wearing a simple, elegant dress. She greeted everyone politely. Nobody responded. The silence was deliberate. Painfully deliberate. She sat down quietly. A servant placed tea in front of everyone except her. Amara noticed. So did several family members. Nobody said anything. Instead, they continued eating, as though she wasn't even there. The humiliation stung, but she remained calm. Then came another blow. One of Junwoo's aunts casually pulled out photographs. Beautiful women, daughters of wealthy businessmen, models, socialites, heiresses. She deliberately spread the photos across the table. "You know," she said loudly, "these girls have been asking about Junwoo." Several relatives nodded. "Especially this one. Another photo appeared, and this one would make an excellent wife. Amara lowered her eyes. The message was obvious. You don't belong here. You never will. The painful part wasn't hearing the words. It was knowing they wanted her to hear them. That evening she sat alone in the garden. The same garden where she once imagined creating happy memories. Now it felt lonely, cold, foreign. A soft breeze moved through the trees. For the first time since moving to Korea, she wondered if leaving would be easier. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Jun-woo felt strangely uneasy. He sat in a luxury hotel suite preparing for an important meeting. Yet he couldn't concentrate. Something felt wrong. He couldn't explain it. His instincts rarely failed him. Years of managing powerful businesses had sharpened them. And those instincts were telling him that something wasn't right back home. Still, he pushed the feeling aside. Unfortunately, the situation waiting for him was already becoming worse. Because his mother had decided that subtle pressure wasn't enough anymore. She wanted Amara gone. Completely. What happened next would leave scars neither woman would ever forget. 2 days later, the family hosted a private dinner. Important guests attended. Business partners, investors, influential friends. Amara assumed she was invited as Jun-woo's fiancée. Instead, she discovered she had been invited for a completely different reason. Humiliation. Throughout the evening, Jun-woo's mother continuously introduced other women to the guests. Not Amara. Other women. Potential replacements. Potential wives. Potential business opportunities. Amara stood quietly in the background. Watching. Listening. Enduring. Then came the moment that broke her heart. A wealthy businesswoman smiled at Jun-woo's mother. I heard your son is still considering marriage. His mother nodded. Yes. Amara froze. The older woman continued. We're exploring several options. The room erupted in polite laughter. Nobody looked at Amara. Nobody needed to. The damage was already done. She excused herself and quietly left the room. Outside, tears filled her eyes. She wasn't crying because she felt rejected. She was crying because she finally understood something. No matter how hard she tried, no matter how kind she was, no matter how much she loved Jun-woo, his family would never accept her. Not because of anything she had done, but because of who she wasn't. She wasn't rich enough, connected enough, powerful enough. And for people obsessed with status, that would always matter. But what she didn't know was that someone had witnessed everything. An elderly housekeeper named Mrs. Park. Unlike the others, Mrs. Park had grown fond of Amara. She saw her kindness, her humility, her sincerity. That night Mrs. Park made a decision, one that would eventually change everything. She called Jun-woo and told him the truth. Every painful detail, every insult, every humiliation, every cruel comment. The silence on the other end of the phone terrified her. Because she had worked for the family long enough to know what it meant when Kang Jun-woo became silent. It meant he was angry, very angry. When Jun-woo returned to Seoul the next day, the entire mansion felt different. The staff sensed it immediately. The atmosphere was heavy, dangerously heavy. Yet when he saw Amara, he didn't mention the phone call. Instead, he smiled, held her hand, asked about her day. The gentleness confused her. Because behind that gentle smile, a storm was already forming. Later that night, after everyone gathered for dinner, Jun-woo finally spoke. The room became quiet. His voice remained calm. Too calm. Amara. She looked up. Yes. Did anyone make you uncomfortable while I was away? Immediately, several family members stiffened. Amara hesitated, then smiled weakly. No. He studied her face. She was protecting them. Even now. Even after everything. His jaw tightened. Then he turned toward the rest of the table. His gaze landed on his mother. Then his aunt. Then his uncle. One by one. Nobody could meet his eyes. At that moment, he knew Mrs. Park had told the truth. And that realization hurt more than he expected. Because these weren't strangers. They were family. The people who claimed to love him. The people hurting the woman he loved. Still, he remained patient. Because he wanted to solve the problem peacefully. Unfortunately, not everyone shared that goal. And someone was already preparing another attack. One that would push Amara closer to leaving forever. As weeks passed, Jun-woo became more protective. Not possessive. Protective. He began noticing things he previously overlooked. The uncomfortable silence. The passive-aggressive comments. The fake compliments. The subtle exclusions. And the more he noticed, the more guilty he felt. Because Amara had been suffering quietly while he remained distracted by work. One evening he surprised her. After a difficult day, he drove her to a quiet beach outside Seoul. The ocean stretched endlessly before them. The sunset painted the sky gold and orange. For a while neither spoke. They simply listened to the waves. Finally, Jun Woo broke the silence. "Why didn't you tell me?" Amara knew exactly what he meant. She stared at the ocean. "I didn't want you choosing between me and your family." His chest tightened. "And if I choose you?" She looked at him. A mixture of hope and sadness filled her eyes. "Then I'd spend the rest of my life feeling guilty." Those words shattered him. Because once again she was thinking about everyone except herself. He gently took her hand. "Amara." She looked up. "I don't love you because it's convenient." His voice was soft. "I love you because life makes sense when you're beside me." Tears filled her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she smiled. A real smile. And in that moment, both of them believed things might still work out. Unfortunately, someone else was watching their relationship with growing resentment. Jun Woo's cousin, Hyun Suk. Unlike the others, his problem wasn't status. It was greed. For years he secretly dreamed of inheriting a larger share of the family empire. He knew Amara threatened those plans. Because Jun Woo was happier with her, stronger with her, more independent because of her. And Hyun Suk hated that. So he decided to create a lie. A dangerous lie. One that would nearly destroy everything. A few days later, anonymous photographs appeared. Images showing Amara supposedly meeting another man. The photographs spread through the family. Rumors exploded. Whispers filled the mansion. His mother immediately believed the worst. His aunt fueled the gossip. His cousins repeated it. The accusations grew larger with every conversation. But what nobody expected was Jun Woo's reaction. He didn't get angry. He didn't accuse her. He didn't even question her. Instead, he walked directly into her room, placed the photographs on the table, and asked only one question. "Are you okay?" Amara stared at him in disbelief. "You're not angry?" Jun Woo smiled. "I trust you." The tears came instantly. Not because of the rumors, but because somebody finally believed her without demanding proof. What neither of them knew was that the truth behind those photographs would soon expose a secret far bigger than anyone imagined. And when that secret surfaced, the entire family would be forced to see Amara for who she truly was. Not an outsider, not an opportunist. The photographs continued spreading through the family for several days. Even after Jun Woo dismissed them, even after Amara denied them, even after there was no evidence supporting the accusations, the rumors refused to die. That was the thing about people who wanted to believe the worst. Truth rarely mattered. They simply searched for reasons to justify their prejudice. Amara tried to stay strong. She focused on work. She focused on helping others. She focused on maintaining her dignity. But little by little, the constant pressure began wearing her down. Every room felt uncomfortable. Every gathering felt exhausting. Every family event felt like a test she was destined to fail. The painful part wasn't the criticism. It was the loneliness. She loved Jun Woo deeply. But she couldn't marry only one person. Marriage meant joining a family. And his family clearly didn't want her. Meanwhile, Jun Woo quietly investigated the photographs. The results shocked him. The man in the images wasn't a secret lover. He was a hospital administrator. And every meeting had been related to charity work. Charity work that Amara never spoke about. Curious, Jun Woo continued digging deeper. The more he learned, the more stunned he became. Years before meeting him, Amara had quietly funded medical treatments for struggling families. She had paid school fees for children she barely knew. She had donated to shelters, supported widows, helped students, sponsored surgeries. And somehow, nobody knew. Not because she hid it, but because she never felt the need to announce it. She simply helped people, then moved on, as though kindness was the most natural thing in the world. For the first time, Jun Woo truly understood why he fell in love with her. It wasn't her beauty, though she was beautiful. It wasn't her intelligence, though she was intelligent. It was her heart, a heart that remained kind even after life had given her countless reasons to become bitter. But what happened next changed everything. One afternoon, Jun Woo received a call from Mrs. Park. The elderly housekeeper sounded emotional. "There is something you need to see." An hour later, he arrived at a small hospital outside Seoul. Mrs. Park was waiting. She led him into a children's ward. Several young patients smiled when they saw her. Then she pointed toward a framed photograph hanging on the wall. Junwoo stared. His breath caught. The photograph showed Amara surrounded by children, laughing, smiling, holding gifts. One of the nurses approached. "You know her?" Junwoo nodded. The nurse smiled warmly. "She has been helping these children for years." "What do you mean?" The nurse looked surprised. "You didn't know?" Junwoo slowly shook his head. The nurse continued. "Without her support, several of these children wouldn't have received treatment." Silence filled the room. At that moment, something became painfully clear. The woman his family called unworthy had spent years saving lives, while the people judging her spent years protecting their status. The contrast couldn't have been greater. And suddenly Junwoo realized something. The problem was no longer convincing his family to accept her. The problem was convincing Amara not to leave. Because every day she stayed, she paid an emotional price she didn't deserve. And unfortunately, she had already made a decision. Several days later, Amara sat alone in her room. A suitcase rested on the bed, half packed, half full, just like her heart, half hopeful, half broken. The decision hadn't been easy. She loved Junwoo more than she had ever loved anyone. But love wasn't supposed to hurt this much. Love wasn't supposed to feel like proving your worth every day. Love wasn't supposed to make you question whether you belonged. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Park entered quietly. Her eyes immediately found the suitcase. The older woman froze. "You're leaving?" Amara smiled sadly. "I think it's best." Mrs. Park's eyes filled with tears. "Have you told him?" Amara looked away. "No." The elderly woman understood immediately. If she told him beforehand, he would try to stop her. And Amara wasn't sure she was strong enough to resist. That evening Junwoo attended an important board meeting. For the first time in years, he couldn't focus. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. His instincts screamed at him. The meeting ended early. Ignoring everyone, he immediately headed home. The drive felt unusually long. Anxiety tightened his chest. And when he finally arrived, his worst fear became reality. The mansion was silent. Too silent. Then he saw them. Suitcases. Near the entrance. His heart stopped. No. 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 He rushed forward. And there she was, standing near the door, holding back tears, the engagement ring resting in her palm. The sight shattered him. For a moment he couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The woman who had become his home was preparing to leave. Forever. Amara looked at him. Tears streamed down her face. "I can't do this anymore." Every word felt like a knife. "I've tried." She swallowed hard. "I really tried." Junwoo slowly approached. Desperation filled his eyes. "Amara." She shook her head. "I love you." His heart tightened. "But I can't spend the rest of my life fighting for a place in your family." The ring trembled in her hand. "I wanted a home." Her voice cracked. "A real home." The next few seconds would become the most unforgettable moment in the history of the Kong family. Without hesitation, Kong Junwoo dropped to his knees. The guards froze. The servants gasped. Everyone watching stood stunned. The powerful billionaire who bowed to nobody was kneeling before the woman he loved. Tears filled his eyes. Real tears. Unfiltered tears. Not for business. Not for money. Not for power. For love. "Please don't leave me." His voice broke. The words echoed through the mansion. Amara covered her mouth. Shocked. Heartbroken. Overwhelmed. Junwoo reached for her trembling hands. "I know I've failed you." More tears escaped. "I should have protected you better." His shoulders shook. "I should have fought sooner." The sight was devastating. Because everyone could see the truth. This wasn't a powerful man protecting his pride. This was a man terrified of losing the person he loved most. "I can't imagine my life without you." His voice became quieter, more vulnerable. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me." Amara's tears fell freely. For a long moment, neither moved. Then she asked the question that mattered most. "What are you going to do differently?" Silence filled the room. Then Junwoo stood, wiped his tears, and answered, "Everything." The next morning, he proved it. Every family member received a message. Mandatory meeting. Attendance required. No exceptions. Within hours, everyone gathered. His parents, his uncles, his aunts, his cousins. Nobody knew why. The atmosphere felt tense, heavy, dangerous. Then Junwoo entered. His expression was calm, but his eyes told another story. He stood at the head of the table and spoke. Today ends the discussion about my future wife. The room immediately became silent. His mother frowned. We only wanted what was best for her. No. His voice cut through the room. For the first time, nobody interrupted. Nobody challenged him. Nobody moved. Then he asked a simple question. Who chose your spouse? His uncle blinked. What? Answer me. I did. Junwoo turned toward another relative. And you? I chose mine. One after another. The same answer. Finally, he faced his mother. Who chose father? Silence. The room understood immediately. Junwoo's voice became firm. If every one of you had the freedom to choose who you loved. He paused. What gives you the right to choose for me? Nobody answered. Because nobody could. Then came the revelation that changed everything. Junwoo placed several files on the table. Hospital records, scholarship documents, charity reports, donation histories. The family stared, confused, until he explained. Every page connected to Amara. Every page represented a life she had helped. Every page represented kindness she never talked about. One by one, their expressions changed. Shock, disbelief, embarrassment, shame. A little girl received surgery because of Amara. A struggling student graduated because of Amara. A widow kept her home because of Amara. A family survived because of Amara. And she never once asked for recognition. Never once asked for praise. Never once asked for attention. The room became silent. Painfully silent. Then Junwoo delivered the words nobody would ever forget. I don't love her because she's perfect. His voice echoed through the room. I love her because she's real. Nobody looked away. Nobody dared. Then came his final warning. If anyone continues disrespecting Amara. His gaze hardened. They will leave this mansion. The room froze. And they will lose every position they hold in this family business. The threat wasn't empty. Everyone knew it. Junwoo never made promises he couldn't keep. For the first time, his family truly understood how serious he was. And for the first time, they began seeing the truth. The woman they rejected wasn't their problem. Their prejudice was. That realization hurt. But it was necessary. Because growth often begins with discomfort. Later that evening, something extraordinary happened. A knock sounded at Amara's apartment door. She wasn't expecting visitors. When she opened it, she froze. The entire Kong family stood outside. Her eyes widened. The first person to step forward was Junwoo's mother. The same woman who opposed her from the beginning. Tears filled the older woman's eyes. Then she bowed deeply. I'm sorry. Amara couldn't speak. The older woman continued. I judged you before knowing you. Her voice trembled. I was wrong. Then another family member apologized. Then another. And another. And another. One by one, the walls that had divided them finally collapsed. Not because Junwoo forced them, but because they finally saw the truth. For the first time, Amara felt something she never expected. Acceptance. Real acceptance. Not tolerance. Not politeness. Acceptance. Then Junwoo stepped forward, holding a small velvet box. Inside rested the engagement ring, the same ring she had returned. He smiled softly. I told you I'd fight for us. Tears filled her eyes. Why? Junwoo looked at her as though she was the only person in the world. Because in many ways, she was. Then he answered. Because family isn't built by people who agree all the time. He gently took her hand. It's built by people who choose each other every day. And slowly, he slipped the ring back onto her finger. This time, she didn't take it off. The wedding took place 6 months later. Not in a palace. Not in a luxury ballroom. Not surrounded by political elites. Instead, it was held in a beautiful garden overlooking the sea. Simple. Elegant. Meaningful. Exactly what they wanted. As Amara walked down the aisle, tears filled many eyes, including Junwoo's. For once, nobody cared about status. Nobody cared about power. Nobody cared about wealth. They cared about love. The kind of love that survives hardship. The kind of love that chooses forgiveness. The kind of love that fights when walking away would be easier. Years passed. The mansion slowly transformed. Laughter replaced tension. Warmth replaced pride. Family dinners became celebrations. Birthdays became treasured memories. And the family that once rejected Amara became the family that protected her. One afternoon, years later, Junwoo sat in the garden watching their children play. Amara sat beside him. The same garden where she once cried. The same garden where she once felt alone. Now it was filled with laughter, hope, belonging. She leaned against his shoulder and smiled. For the first time in her life, she truly understood something. Home was never about walls, or wealth, or mansions. Home was the people willing to fight to keep you there. Junwoo looked at her. What are you thinking about? She smiled. You kept your promise. He smiled back. I always will. And as the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon, surrounded by family, love, and peace, both of them realized they had found the one thing money could never buy. A place where they belonged. Together. Forever. This story reminds us that true love is never about status, wealth, family background, or social position. Real love is about loyalty, understanding, respect, and the willingness to stand beside someone even when the world stands against them. Junwoo learned that protecting the person you love sometimes means challenging the people closest to you. Amara learned that genuine love doesn't just speak, it acts. And the Kong family learned that character matters more than status. Because at the end of the day, the strongest families aren't built through power. They're built through love. If you made it this far, let us know where you're watching from and comment your favorite moment below, like this video, and subscribe to @Physial_Threads for more emotional Mafia love stories.